AskReddit by 4 cents. Men of Reddit, what are some less obvious red flags about men you would want to caution women against? Don't ever be fooled by how a man treats you. Look at how he treats unattractive women and other men. This is actually one of the best advice on here. PPL keep mentioning being rude to servers, but if the server is attractive, then being nice doesn't mean much. If he mentions that he's a nice guy every few sentences, stay away from him. So about his last 3 relationships and why they ended. If it is always the girl was crazy, it's him. He's crazy. I briefly dated a guy who told me that 4 of his ex-girlfriends had restraining orders against him, and they were all crazy. I told him that I didn't want to see him anymore, and he was genuinely surprised and asked why. I said, well, either you're the problem, or you have very bad judgment skills in choosing partners, and neither of those is okay. Then he texted me maybe I should start thinking about murder. Pretty terrifying. Glad I got out so early. Many men only know how to relationship flirt. They will say things like I'm looking for something long term when really they just want to hook up. My best friend entered the dating pool after being in a relationship for a long time. She only wanted to hook up for a while and was open about upfront, even before the actual date. There were guys still insistent on wanting a relationship with her, and once they'd won her over, not at the same time, and both times it took a while, they immediately dropped her. One even confessed to already having a girlfriend and proceeded to want a relationship to make chicks down to fuck. Like, why would you even continue to push these narratives in this case? A friend of mine dated a guy who apparently everyone wanted to fight. At the gym. This guy over here want to throw down. At a mall. Those guys look like they want to get hit. At the grocery store. This dude is looking at me like he wants to go outside. No, Steve. No one feels like fighting you. You are just on steroids. IDK, openly wishing for violence seems pretty obvious lol. As someone who is very guilty of this, focusing a ton on you and your needs, but hardly paying attention to their own. Someone like this can come across as sweet, selfless, and caring, but they are actually avoiding their own problems to focus on yours. You are not a partner to them, you're a distraction, and even they themselves may not realize it. Yup, this is me in relationships. It's why I'm not dating right now, so I can figure my own shit out. It's weird when people are like you're always happier when you're in a relationship and shit. Like yeah, sure, but I gotta learn to be happy when I'm not in one, because it's not worth trying to be in a real relationship if I can't be happy outside of one. Gotta learn to give myself the love I'm willing to give to other people. Any aversion to taking responsibility. The older I get, the more I find that the men I respect most aren't the ones with great achievements to their names, but rather the ones who aren't afraid to own their shit. I considered it a great disappointment when the government department I worked for stopped allowing people to own and follow through on customer issues. Previously, you could run into a problem, tell the member of the public, usually, I will fix that, and you would become the hub for that issue, even if you had to contact 3 or 4 other people with high level authority to actually fix the thing. Whoever the customer spoke with first, they could keep speaking with them on follow-ups, and that same person would be in the loop and pushing the agenda. After that was dropped, we ended up with the old stereotype of customers being forwarded from one person to another, often going around in loops, with no one actually ever taking responsibility for getting the issues resolved. If anything happens to him and he always shifts blame to someone else, or something else, or the situation, that is a big red flag. Sooner or later everything will be your fault. Also, if their story, complaint, rant, or explanation sounds too one-sided, again unable to take blame themselves, they are lacking empathy, red flag. Deleted. Don't trust a man who can joke about others but can't take it. Edit. I know that this can apply to women. The thing is, I shouldn't need a disclaimer just to gain permission to critique men, and some of you shouldn't need to drag women down just to acknowledge a personality flaw. This bugs the shit out of me. Even outside of the date world, we've had the same group of like 10 friends since high school, and even 20 years later there's that one guy we wish would just loosen up. When you have to cater to his needs once over your own with no compromise. It can be something as only watching shows that he wants, or doing things only he wants to do, or ordering takeout that only he likes. Oh, this makes me think of a man I was seeing, and we went to the mall together, and I went into about 7 different stores he wanted to go into. Sports stores, video game stores, comic stores. I finally found a store I'd like to go into, and not even 5 minutes and he says, "Come on, we're leaving." Man, just the ordering me to do as he says was enough, but I couldn't believe that I couldn't be in one store I liked for not even a couple minutes. You'll be able to tell if a guy is nice by how he behaves. If a guy tells you he's nice, ignore that. That's meaningless. That's like calling yourself a rad dude. Most certainly you are not. As a father, things I've tried to teach my daughter to be aware of are subtle manipulations. In a healthy relationship there is no letters in, letting you do stuff or asking for permission. Watch for subtle controlling, passive-aggressive comments or remarks. If he attempts to drive a wedge between you and your friends or family, move on. Watch and listen to how he treats other people. If you don't have self-respect, he won't treat you with respect. If he doesn't call for days, then acts like it's no big deal. Move on. If he's clingy, definitely move on. Having a victim mentality attracts predatory, abusive behavior. If anyone treats you less than how you feel you deserve, it is imperative you deal with it early and quickly. If there's no meaningful communication or compromise, don't waste your time. Life is too short to deal with a possessive, jealous, controlling, manipulative. If he isn't on the same level of maturity of you, regardless of age, don't go for it. One of you will turn into the parent. A little add-on to this, pun fully intended. Some people think that they want this. People into AGA play, DDLG and similar relationships think it is fine if I become the parent. That is what I want to be. But most power exchange relationships actually take more maturity on the part of the little sub-app etc. to work well. Someone who is childlike can make a great partner in these situations. Someone who is childish will make the relationship go very bad. If he starts throwing tantrums over petty things, there is worse on the horizon. He's not passionate, he's unstable. I broke up with my ex because he had a full-on tantrum because of a board game. They were playing Civilization. He declared a truce with another player, went on to aggressively attack the other players, then completely freaked out because the player he had a truce with spent turns building up and then attacked him while he was overcommitted on the board. He legit tried to throw the guy out of a game store that he, my ex, no longer worked for and ban him for life. I was grateful, because it finally opened my eyes as to what a fucking child he was. If they verbally attack you in an argument rather than discuss the issue. If they constantly shit talk other guys. Or talk shit about all your friends. Jesus, it took me 7 years to finally figure out he isolated me. If he's dumb, but thinks he's smart. Yep. A smart person is one who isn't afraid to say I don't know, then let's look that up. If a guy is doing the minimum of what you want in a long-term relationship at the beginning, it's going to be well below your standards after a few years. I would expect about half of what you see in the first year. Yes, mom told me 30 years ago that marriage doesn't make your relationship better. This is as good as it's ever going to be. Can you be happy if this is the peak? I realize that no, I didn't want to mother a grown man. I wanted an equal partner. Best decision ever, no shade on his character. Just not the match for either of us. If they behave like they know everything, change is certainly not their cup of tea. As in a know-it-all, or am answer for everything? Sometimes people are just naturally curious and happen to keep learning weird things to add to their knowledge. If he's a selfish lover in bed, he'll likely be a selfish partner in life. Met this girl on Tinder. She seemed nice. We went to dinner after work one day. She asked me one question about myself. The dinner was 2 hours long because I carried the fuck out of the conversation. Decided I'd at least try one more time. We ended up having sex. She barely touched me. It was the weirdest fucking shit. It was like I didn't exist. This goes for both genders, but don't date someone under the assumption that they'll change something fundamental about themselves. Not fair to either of you. Many moons ago, the first girl I ever dated, remember thinking, I love this girl and it would be perfect if only insert several fundamental qualities about her that were not compatible with me. Of course it didn't work out. Then I repeated that mistake about 6 more times. On the 7th long-term relationship, I remember not being able to come up with anything I would change. We've been together for 10 years, married for 5. She's amazing. And perfect. I still wouldn't change a thing. If he believes relationships without arguments or screaming matches are doomed for lack of passion, he probably hasn't learned to communicate in a healthy way. On the opposite side of this, if he believes that any argument at all is the end all of everything. Adult people who are in adult relationships, who spend all of their adult time with another specific adult, will disagree. They will, at some point, argue. Sometimes, they will yell at each other. This isn't abnormal. If you guys argue and his first act is to say, well, that's it then. I guess we're going to break up, or anything amounting to that phrase, he is emotionally stunted. Have the argument. Learn about each other's boundaries while having the argument. Apologize and do better next time. Learn how to communicate and how not to communicate after the argument. Grow together. The best person for you is someone who meets you in the middle of arguing, shows passion, and arguing means we could in no way be compatible because we don't agree with each other about every single thing and are not passionate about important shit. When they don't respect the word no, even in the most benign of circumstances. Yes. This is incredibly important. Lots of gossip. If he talks about other people, he'll talk about you. Had this happen with family members. They'd talk shit about other people while we were there visiting. It finally popped in my head. Wait a minute, if they talk like that about other people when we're there, what are they saying about us when we're not there? Exclamation point. I got confirmation of that later on when a mutual family member told me about stuff they said about me when they were visiting them. Not cool. When someone is declaring multiple times they are not a certain way without prompt, they are actually that way. Deleted. Constantly indirect. It's leaving wiggle room so he can claim he wasn't lying later. I got called out on this once. It was an eye-opener. Avoiding absolutes was my default mode. I didn't realize anyone cared about that. If he doesn't want to talk about awkward stuff while you are dating, then he might not want to talk about awkward problems in the relationship. Edit. It is interesting how people make their own interpretation of things. I never gave any definition of awkward, nor did I specify any timelines, but some folks seem to cherry pick the definitions they want, so they can discount this. Unfortunately, it doesn't change the core concept. If you are dating someone, and they have stinky socks they leave lying around, instead of going into the laundry, that's an awkward topic. If one person talks about how much they want to be a parent to their own biological kids, and the other knows they don't want children, that's an awkward topic. Humans do have a tendency to try to avoid stuff that makes them uncomfortable, or scares them. We tend to hope problems will go away if we leave them alone. I've talked to a lot of friends who got divorced, who thought their partner would change after marriage. You don't need to give your intimate autobiography on a first date, but if you see an obvious issue, like the children example, There's no point in waiting a while to point it out. Me ATM. If you hear a little voice inside you that says I can change this man, he is not the man for you. My mom taught us don't worry if a guy dresses like a dog. That is one thing you can change, but make sure he's good on the inside. You can't change that. Sober men trying to pick up super drunk women. I once took a super drunk girl home with her, now ex, friend of mine. She and I had been hanging out all night, so when we left her house my friend asked why I didn't stay and sleep with her. I'm embarrassed to admit that that was not the incident which led to us being no longer friends, although it was the incident that started making me pay attention to his concerning behaviors. Blaming their childhood on treating you and others like rubbish. Had an ex that would always blame his exes for why they went wrong and went as far as calling his recent ex a slut because she would want him to watch their son to have me time. I ignored so many flags from that dude. Crazy. This one is extremely obvious, yet I've seen dozens of women still make the same mistake. If he's rude, selfish and possessive before you're dating, he will not change once you start dating. I don't know why so many women think that a man will have an epiphany and become better once they get in a relationship. People very rarely change. If anything, I would say he would be on his best behavior when you first meet, which means that his behavior is only going to at best stay the same, or get worse.